everyone, welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm Ariane Zurcher, and today I'm going to be demonstrating the backstitch. I'm going to use a couple of different threads, and I'm going to use a couple of different backgrounds so that you can see what it looks like on just a plain fabric like a linen, or if it's done on a background with something else appliqued down, and how you might use the backstitch to emphasize that appliqued shape. I also show how to begin and end the thread, as well as how to start a thread without using a knot in the back, and also how to end it without using a knot. So get something to stitch with, get a needle and some thread, and let's stitch the backstitch together. All right, we're going to do the backstitch, and I'm going to start by working on a piece of linen. And the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to begin a stitch using a knot and then doing it without a knot. So there are two ways to start when you're just working on a single piece of fabric, whether it's linen, cotton, wool, whatever it is, but especially a linen or a cotton where it's something that you don't want the knot to show on the other side, or you're worried that the bulk of it is going to somehow change what you're doing. So the first one is to do a quilter's knot. For the back stitch, you want to come in one stitch length in from where you want to begin. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to be working from left to right. If you're right-handed, you're going to do the same thing, but you're going to be working from right and going left. So as I said, I'm coming in one stitch length away from where I want to start. What that means is I'm now going to go back a stitch length and I'm going to come forward a stitch length. This thread that's emerging should be equidistant between here and here. Hence the name, the back stitch. I'm going to pull this, but as you can see, I'm not pulling it tightly. So I'm not doing that, where you're going to start bunching your fabric. I'm also not leaving a loop. I'm letting it lie just flat against the fabric. I'm now going to go back, and I'm going to come forward. Again, the thread should be in the center, ideally. If it's not exact, that's okay, but that's what you're shooting for. You go back. Same here. You go back, you come forward. You want your thread center. There's back. Now you're coming forward. You're going to keep doing this all the way along whatever shape you're doing. You can also do this in a circle. It doesn't have to be a straight line. It can be any curve. It can be anything you want. Now when you want to end, or you run out of thread, you pull your stitch through. You're going to turn your fabric over. I started with a knot. I can end with a knot. Now I can also, because I don't have any layers, I can kind of weave this end through these other stitches and pull my thread through before clipping it. Now if I've run out of thread, I'm going to come up one stitch length away. I'm going to go back to my preceding stitch and come forward as I was before and continue. I'm going to use a different thread now. This is Aurora. It's a beautiful thread by a company called The Thread Gatherer. Again, I'm using a chenille 24 chenille needle. If it's a heavier weight, I'm going to use an 18 chenille. I'm not going to tie a knot in it. I'm going to come up with my thread, and with my finger, I'm sort of holding it here and just feeling where the end is. And when I get close to the end, I'm going to stop. And then I come back and I go forward. Now in the back, I want to be sure that I pull my thread and hold it. I'm holding it with this finger like this. And I'm going to now go back and then go forward. And I'm holding that thread underneath so that as I go back, it's getting woven in to these stitches. And I'm going to show you what it looks like on the back so that you can see. Okay, so there's my back stitch in the Aurora, and here is my back stitch with holding that thread, and most of it's gotten woven in. There's a little bit here, that's okay. And I can keep going. And again, I don't want to pull because I don't want this fabric to get bunched up, and I don't want to change the shape of it. Have you ever had the experience where you've been embroidering and suddenly your measurements are off because the hand stitching has so changed the shape of the fabric? So I'm trying very hard to be aware of that and to be careful not to bunch that up. And there we go, we can stop now. It's my back stitch using the Aurora. That was the spun silk with flames from Steph Francis. And now what I'm going to do is, instead of tying a knot, I'm going to weave my needle in to these back stitches here. Before clipping it off. Alright, so I thought I would show you the back stitch using, this is a 4mm silk ribbon, again from the thread gatherer. So I'm going to pull my needle up, and then I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to come up equidistant away. That's my first stitch. I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to come up, and that makes my second stitch. Go down, and there is my back stitch using silk ribbon. I'm going to show you the back stitch going along a piece of fabric with some sort of applique, where I'm going to use the back stitch to emphasize the applique shape. So you can see what that looks like and where I'm placing the stitching. I'm using, this is a Purl 5 Step Francis. It's number 33, variegated cotton thread. And I'm working on a linen background with a wool applique. And when I do my backstitch against an applique, I'm going to come right up against the applique. Pull my thread through, and now I'm going to do my back stitch. And then I'm going to come forward. Right? Again, that thread is going to be equidistant between the beginning and where it's coming out. I pull my thread through, I go back, and now I'm coming forward again. And again, I'm running right along the edge of the applique. I'm making sure that I don't pull it because I don't want to make this circle smaller. I want it to be the same size as when I start out. All right, so again, I go back down where I came out, and then I come up equidistant away, making sure that I don't pull that thread because I don't want it to bunch up. I want those stitches to be somewhat equal. If they're not completely, these are a little bit shorter, these are a little bit longer, that's okay. But I want to be aware and try to make them as equal as I possibly can. It's like knitting, you want those stitches, you want your tension to be the same. I could always tell when I was nervous, when I was knitting, my stitches would get a lot tighter. I'm just going to continue around in this way. And as I get closer to meeting the other end, I'm going to start looking at my stitches and gauging how many I'm going to get, so that I don't have a really long one or some really tiny short ones. I'm hoping that they're going to be sort of even at the end when I meet up. But of course that can be tricky. So I can see that I have so I'm going back here 1, I've probably got 2, maybe 4. This one's going to be a little bit longer, but it's not going to be long enough that it's going to make a big difference, I don't think. So there's my back stitch going around. Now, the back stitch is used as a base for a lot of other stitches, so I can now do a double threaded back stitch, I can do a single threaded, I can do a whipped back stitch, or I can use this as the base for a trellis stitch, a open buttonhole filler stitch, a Pekingese stitch. There are just a whole slew of stitches that start with their base as the back stitch. So it's a really good one to know how to do, and to do it well so that it's not all bunched up, that your circle's not changing shape, that when you look at the back, the fabric is laying flat and isn't sort of pulling in on itself. Those are kind of the giveaways. So I'm going to go ahead and knot my thread here. And then I can weave it in, because I have a layer, I can weave it in between this linen and the wool before clipping off that thread, so that the end of the thread is nestled underneath the layer of wool and linen. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you found that helpful. Next up, I'm going to be doing the threaded backstitch and the double threaded backstitch, and I'll do one video for the two of those.